Presenting the Orange Blossom Trailblazers with your hosts, Catherine Cochia and Kalitha Anderson.
Hey, Kalitha.
Hey, Catherine.
Well, it is time for another fabulous Orange Blossom Trailblazer podcast.
We are back with another episode, you guys.
And this time we're joined by Lauri Wright, a former Academy president.
Yes.
I can't wait for you to hear her story. It is really one of really creating opportunities in places that you might not think about creating opportunities. One of the things that she talks a lot about is how she was able to make her career kind of her own, and that you don't need to get bored. So if you're a mid-level career dietitian and you've been in the same job for 10, 15 years and you're looking for something new, I think Lauri Wright's a great example of how you can utilize your skills to advance your career in new and interesting ways and continue to do that through leadership opportunities as well as job opportunities.
This is what being a trailblazer is all about to me, like seizing those opportunities and running with them. So with that, you guys buckle up, enjoy this episode, and we'll catch you guys at the end.
Thank you again for coming and participating in this project with me today. I am so excited to talk to you about your experiences in FAND and in the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. But I like to start out these interviews by asking everybody, what made you want to become a dietitian in the first place?
That's a good question. I came into dietetics a little non-traditional. I'm a first generation college student. So when I went to college, my dad said, well, you should be a nurse or you should be a teacher, because that's all he understood. I went nursing because I always loved hospitals. And my sophomore year, I took a nutrition class and I loved it. I had been an athlete in high school and I'd always been very interested in nutrition. Had been a chubby kid and learned about how to alter my diet to get to a healthy weight. So I had that background, that interest, but I didn't know there was a job or career with it. So I went up to the professor and I said, this is really cool. What can I do with it? And as a profession, and she said, oh, you can become a registered dietitian. And at Ohio State, we actually had two programs. So she said, well, you can go to this program. You need this little thing afterwards called an internship, but don't worry about that. And, that was back in the day when there was 50% match rate. But that's how I came into dietetics and have never regretted my choice at all.
Oh, that's amazing. A little thing called an internship. So you have to tell
us.
Yes.
Uproot and move. And for me, I had to go to Cleveland. I did the Cleveland VA internship and the Case Western Reserve Masters.
So, people are going to wonder, what sport did you play?
So I was a competitive racquetball player. Racquetball isn't around that much anymore, but I competed throughout the state. And I was fairly highly ranked in racquetball, and I have the knees to show it.
Oh, that's a different one. I wasn't expecting racquetball.
Yes, racquetball.
So after that, you said you loved hospitals. Your career has taken so many different facets. You worked as a clinical dietitian for the VA. You established the Bay Pines VA Hospital Dietetic Internship. You were an internship director. You served in multiple academic and leadership roles at the University of North Florida and the University of South Florida, kind of back and forth a little bit. What inspired your journey? And what do you say to the people that feel a little stuck in where they are in dietetics, since you did take on different aspects?
I always say, this is one of the selling points to me about our profession, is you should never be bored in our field. There are so many opportunities, but you have to be in the driver's seat. So yes, I was a general medicine dietitian at the Tampa VA dietitian for 14 years before I moved over to Bay Pines and started the internship there. But as a general medicine dietitian, I started immediately doing other things. I was very interested in HIV disease. And at the time, I died from malnutrition. And you could tell someone had HIV just by looking at them, but there was nothing documented yet in the research. So it was within the first year of my hire at Tampa VA, I started a research project on our HIV patients and looking at the prevalence of malnutrition and what were the nutrition related complications. And that study that'll come back as I kind of tell my story. But so I was doing the data analysis when Donald Kotler published the Sentinel research study on malnutrition in HIV patients. So mine was the second one. And I actually got published in the Journal of the Academy, which is not easy, but how I got it on my first shot, and I've had difficulty getting in since, but I then started, as part of my job, I said, okay, I want to cover the infectious disease clinics. So 2 days a week, I would cover 2 half days, I would cover the infectious disease clinics, did a little bit more research on body composition. And then I thought, there's so few of us working in this area. So I established a network of dietitians in the VA working in infectious disease. So, I'm always trying something new. I don't like to be stable. I always want to build something new. And that was with me even as a gen med dietitian. I think that you need to challenge yourself. You need to find your passion. Of course, part of the extras that I was doing while I was a medicine dietitian was I knew I wanted to one day become an internship director. That was my long-term goal. And I was a preceptor, obviously. So then I started volunteering with the accrediting body. Back then it was called Katie, now it's called Ascend, but I became a site visitor. And, I learned so much about the accreditation process, the language that we speak in education. And so when Bay Pines decided they wanted to start an internship, it was just a natural fit. I knew that I had been a site visitor. I was working on my PhD. I had covered for our internship director at Tampa. So it was just a natural fit. Think about what you're passionate, what you would like to see yourself doing, and then work on those skills that will get you to where you want to go. That's what I would recommend for people that maybe feel a little bored with the process.
I think that's amazing. And just even, I didn't know any of that about your work with the HIV/AIDS, and just thinking about that time period when no one kind of knew what it was and they were still trying to figure everything out. Like, what a interesting time to get involved in that research.
It was so powerful. And that first research study I did, I submitted for a poster for FNCE. And it was the first time that FNCE had been in Orlando. I got a phone call from the Academy and they said, I know you submitted for a poster, but we'd like you to do a regular session. So here I was, it was early in my career and I'm up on this stage with, hundreds of dietitians, but HIV was so understudied and it was a really amazing opportunity for me.
Absolutely incredible. And I can't even imagine getting that phone call of, hey, I thought I was doing a post.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays, we're submitting and hoping we get accepted, but back then I got the phone call,
So while you were doing all of these different things, you also took time to get involved with the Florida Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And, when you were involved as the president, you described your year as one of great transformation. And just for some context of what was going on. So you were the president in 2012. So we had just gotten out of the Great Recession. That was from 2007, 2009. Finances were rough for everybody. At the same time, the Licensure Practice Act was up for sunsetting. So they were reviewing it. It was a natural process at that point to look at it to see, do we still need to be licensed? And your year was also a 5-year strategic year. So thinking about everything that was going on there, were you ever a little apprehensive of being president during that time?
So I have a habit of saying yes without thinking things through. And I didn't, my volunteer experience had only been with really Ascend doing site visiting. And I hadn't really done much volunteer with the local. The one thing that I had done is when the internship director at Tampa VA was president, Ann Brazina, she appointed me because I had done some media work. So she had, at that time, we had a Florida spokesperson, and she appointed me the Florida spokesperson. So that was my only experience with FAND. And so moving into the presidency, I was encouraged by some of my mentors, Judy Rodriguez and Kathy Christie, and they said, you need to do this, you need to do this. And I was like, but I don't know anything about FAND. And it wasn't FAND. That our Florida fans, that announcement came at opening session when we changed the name of Florida Association to the Florida Academy. Judy Rodriguez as president had just done that the year before, and then we changed our name. We also had kind of some challenges because the president-elect had to step down for some issues. So for half the year as president, I didn't have an elect. And I really relied on Alyssa Goldstein. She was amazing, and she was our treasurer, and she was member at large, and she was really helpful. But we did a lot. We did a lot. We changed the name. We did the retreat talking about money and our strategic plan. We did the retreat at my house. I lived in Ellington at the time, and we just turned my house into like a B&B, and we worked all weekend and developed our strategic plan. That's probably it would have been the first Florida FAND meeting that Addie attended, because she was a kid at the house at the time. But we knocked out that strategic plan that weekend at my house. So we did what we needed to do. And the sunsetting really in the strategic plan helped position us well. I wasn't out of office for 6 months when the attack, that Alternative Practice Act, started circulating up in Tallahassee. And then that's when we opened up the Practice Act. So that was under Gail Brazzi Smith after I was president. Then that's when we had to rally the troops and do our new Practice Act. But I really do feel like we had the foundation that helped us be successful.
Yeah, just for context for everyone listening, because, some people kind of remember that time period. Some people don't remember that time period very much, but that is when the Practice Act did open. We were able to get writing privileges in that act.
This first time, our strategy was we opened up our Practice Act so that we could modernize. That's the strategy. We were being proactive. We were modernizing our Practice Act to include order writing privileges, among other things.
Despite all these different challenges that were going on during your presidency, it did result in new collaborations connecting dietitians to service opportunities. You did a really awesome connection with Feeding America. There was a new task force to work with insurance reimbursement with Florida Blue Cross Blue Shield at that time. You had big member engagement during the time period. We won the Academy National Vote competition. So people were getting out, they were participating. How do you feel you were able to mobilize members so well during your time as president?
There is a former governor of Florida called Lawton Childs. I actually, at USF, my office is in the Childs Center. But I really admire his philosophy when he was governor. He had once a week, they called him Walkin' Lawton, because he walked in the shoes of Floridians, of his constituents. He tried to get to know Floridians from all different walks of life. And so I made it my goal to go to as many district meetings as possible. And I think I hit almost every area of the state except Tallahassee. I didn't make it up to Tallahassee, but I hit almost every district meeting because I wanted to hear what the dietitians were experiencing. What were the challenges? What were their hopes and dreams for the profession? And how might we do that? And I think that helped build a sense of network of us. We are in it together. And so then again, like with the Practice Act, when we called upon people to say, we need you, we had a record number at that time of, usually legislative workshop is just interns, but we had a record number. The number of dietitians outnumbered the number of interns. And I think that's because dietitians saw this is about us and our profession. I love to connect with people. And I think that was one of the ways that we were able to accomplish as much as we did.
That's amazing. I think it's such a good point. Sometimes we think about what is the Florida Academy doing for me? What is the Academy doing for me? But it's our responsibility to go out there and work together to be able to create changes that we want to see.
We're so much more powerful together. And you have to, when you're going out and networking, you have to listen to the negatives too. Well, what are you doing for us? What are you doing about this? Why was that? So you have to listen, and there are good points. And then in addition, we want you to help with solutions too. Because again, the more of us that are working together, the more that we can accomplish.
Absolutely. And I think that you see that now as well, as we are talking about changing our licensure again and thinking about how are we going to move forward as a profession. Us working together is just so important.
Yes, 100%.
So you have already kind of mentioned this a little bit. In addition to your presidency in Florida, you've also been really active in the National Academy. You have done a lot with Ascend as a site visitor, as you said, but also as the DEP area coordinator. You were a member of the Council on Future Practice. A lot of the education-related groups you have played a big role in. So can you talk a little bit about those experiences?
I feel like I was blessed with a lot of opportunities. And when I talk to members about service leadership, volunteering, I always say, get involved in areas that you are passionate about. There isn't a site visit that I went on that I didn't get something in return for doing that site visit. I always had new ideas, innovations that the educators were doing that I could take back to my own program. So, I never looked at like, oh, I have to do this or have to do that. It was like, oh my gosh, I get this opportunity to be the first council on future practice. I mean, what an incredible opportunity. After everything that happened with our licensure act in Florida, I became really pro advocacy. And so I got to be on the legislative and public policy committee with the Academy. I mean, what an incredible opportunity. I was a delegate for Florida and then eventually became the speaker of the House. So, I always think these were exciting opportunities that were in areas that I really believed in and thought we could have so much impact. And, those education committees, we really revamped because at the time we had less than 50% of undergraduates matching with internships. And so we started DICAS, we came up with alternative solutions for, to help match more people into internship programs. So it's just been, I've just been thrilled with the opportunities that I have had.
Sounds like different things sparked and moved you along to these different positions.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you feel that shaped your perspectives of dietetics and dietetics education, specifically around, being part of that future education model task force?
I think I'm kind of I know probably some people roll their eyes when they hear me speak, but it just continued to light the fire I have for this profession. As a clinical dietitian, I saw the power of nutrition and what we do as dietitians. And then later in my career, moving into public health, where I can impact hundreds of people with different programs. But, we have such a powerful role in health and wellness. And we have been we haven't really proclaimed that enough and we're doing a better job. But I just think it continued to fuel that fire for our profession, and making sure, trying to position us in these important committees. The Academy president, Ellen Shanley, was the year she preceded me, and she was at that White House conference on hunger. That was the first conference that we'd had in decades. And the first conference we weren't at the table. We're at the table as president. And I was at many national food as medicine conferences because there's so much excitement, but there's so many people trying to take this over, and it should be the dietitian. So I think the more I've done, the more excited I've become about our profession and how we move it forward, how we evolve, and just to be a strong player at all of these tables.
Yeah, I think that's so important. These experiences have increased your worldview of how dietetics can be represented. And so the more you got involved, the more you were able to see the role of the dietitian in such a clear way, which is
absolutely,
so telling. So, you just mentioned that you were president of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. What was it like to serve in that role? And what would you say was your greatest impact?
It was such an honor to be chosen by my peers, that they believed in me. And again, the Academy, there's always challenges there, no matter what year that you serve at the district, state, or nationally. There's always challenges. But how can we, and it's the Academy staff, the CEO, it is such a team, and we're all on the same mission. And when you're president, that's one thing that maybe the president of the United States gets to push their agenda a little bit more. But when you're the president of the Academy, it is the mission, vision, and strategic plan that you are trying to move forward. It isn't about Lauri Wright. It's about our profession and our Academy. So there were a couple of, I think, very exciting opportunities when I was president. One is we onboarded a brand new CEO. We had a CEO for over 20 years. And we had we brought on a new CEO that the president and the CEO are like this. And, I learned a lot from Lisa, and hopefully she learned from me too. And we really were working to bring about change. Everything was about modernizing and changing the Academy. And so I learned a lot about change management, and, I'm very excited with some of the very positive movements that we set into place. Now we have, after I finished as president, we did get a new strategic plan, but there was a lot of pre-work that needed to go into moving us to a new strategic plan. If some people may remember that our profession came under a lot of scrutiny and attack. The Washington Post really, really went after dietitians and saying that we are, we're all promoting products and, we're not science-based. And so one thing I was very proud of is in the past, there was a philosophy that you don't fight back. You don't, because that'll just bring more attention. And that is a philosophy in social media. But with Lisa, as CEO and my personality, I had been a media spokesperson for 9 years. I'm very comfortable in the media and, challenging situations. So we made the decision we were going to take on the Washington Post, and we wrote a letter to the editor that was published. I invited those reporters that attacked us to Fancy. We took them to the exhibit hall. We talked to them. I think we stood up for the profession, and dietitians are doing so much good out there. And, there was some really kind of misappropriation of some of the things that were said and done by a few dietitians in social media. And so I think we helped show the media that look at the impact, look at the good that dietitians are doing. And I think that went a long way for the reputation of the profession. And I got a lot of members that were so appreciative that the Academy fought back, that we weren't just being the nice, good girls that quietly sat by and took it. We fought back, and I know that meant a lot to members as well.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. And I have to tell you, I share that Washington Post article and those letters with my classes every semester in our seminars.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
So we've been talking about them for years now, and because they're so powerful, and it's such a great example of not only us standing up for ourselves, but also what is ethical, what is not ethical within the field of dietetics and nutrition, and that we do have these strengths.
Yeah. And some of the dietitians that were cited, I reached out and talked with several of them. Many of them are not Academy members, but you know what? Dietitian to dietitian, we are connected because we share this profession. And there was a lot of hurt in some of those dietitians that were attacked. And the FTC rules had changed. And so some of it was lack of knowledge about some of the new rules. And some of it was misinterpreting the rules. And so none of those dietitians set out to do something wrong or illegal. And so one of the things we did is we did a big webinar to try to, so how do you harness social media and abide by all the rules? So we wanted to help dietitians use social media. We want dietitians in social media giving out science-based, consumer-friendly information. So how do we help dietitians do that? So, again, I think supporting dietitians, even the dietitians that were kind of attacked by Washington Post, I was proud of that too. We stood up for all dietitians, members or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hear that story time and time again when we talk about licensure, when we talk about these kinds of issues. It's not just those that are part of the group. We all are part of those efforts. So it is important.
And that's what's difficult for some people to understand, is that whether you're a member or not, the Academy is still working for you. And so why not be a more powerful part of that by being a member and being an active member? I was lucky enough, I grew up my dad was a police officer, and he belonged to a national police officer association. He was at one time the national treasurer. So I grew up going to conferences. So service was like ingrained in me, but not everybody has that role model, and they don't necessarily understand what the Academy does for them. But first and foremost, it is the only member organization exclusively for dietitians and dietetic technicians.
And it's such an important message for everyone to hear, is that they need to be part of the group so that we can make these together. So a little shift in topic, but not really. When you became president in 2023, your daughter Addie, who you mentioned earlier, got to write your introduction for the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. What did it mean to you to have your daughter, who's also a dietitian, write that for you?
This is so I try not to get emotional. I'm incredibly proud of all three of my girls, but Addie going into dietetics, when she decided to go into dietetics, interestingly, all three of my girls were professional ballet dancers. So nutrition is like a second career for Addie in a way. When she decided she was quitting dance and was going to go to college, I was in Delhi. I'd been out in the field and didn't have access to a phone. So at the airport, she told me this, and I said, well, honey, whatever you want to do, but what are you thinking about? What field? And she's like, dietetics, of course. And, at first, Catherine, I wasn't sure, because I didn't want her to, number one, feel pressure to go into dietetics because I am a dietitian. And number two, I didn't want her to have me as to have different expectations because of who her mom is, But, I forgot who I was talking about, because this child is so strong and she knows what her path. So she has become an amazing dietitian. I'm in awe of her skills. And so when they asked me about who would write that, it was a natural for her, the perspective that she brought. And then also my best friend co-wrote it. And interestingly enough, my best friend, Sherry Lewis, she and Addie share the same birthday. So when Addie was born on Sherry's birthday, I knew that she was going to be an incredible person because she shared the same birthday with Sherry. But, the perspectives that they bring, she knows me in so many roles, as mom, as dietitian, as leader. And it just, I guess it's one of those where I must have done something right, that my daughter thinks that of me. But, I think we'll see a second generation Academy president one day, because she is absolutely amazing as a practitioner and as a leader already, moving into leadership roles early in her career. I couldn't be more proud of her. And that I have it's actually right over there. I have it framed, that intro. So it was amazing.
That is so special. And Addie is a member of our board. We absolutely love her. And I have to tell you, I didn't know she was your daughter, like the whole time until a couple months ago. And someone's like, that's Lauri Wright's daughter. I was like, it is?
So it's so good now that she, she's married and she has a different name, but I'll tell you a little story. I recently, now that my service load is a little bit less, I am doing some weekend work at Moffitt Cancer Center, and getting my clinical skills, making sure they're up to date. I'm placing feeding tubes. I love it. But I will say that there's been a couple of times that I've texted her and I'm like, hey, this looks like refeeding. Am I right? And, I really admire her, her skills. And so she's the first one I'll go to for reinforcement. And I taught her MMT, but she surpassed me.
And always our goal, right? We want our students to surpass us. So it's amazing that you feel that way about your daughter.
Absolutely.
So talking about all the different things you do professionally, I have been fortunate enough to go to several sessions about the work that you've done with the Center for Nutrition and Food Security at University of North Florida. You guys have presented at Fancy a couple of times. You presented at the Florida Fans, and I've been excited to hear about all of the things that you're doing with the Meals on Wings program, among those other things. And it's especially notable to talk about how you guys really developed and expanded expanded that program during the pandemic shutdown, when so many other programs were shrinking and not able to serve patients. You guys grew during that time and really took on that work. Can you tell us a little bit about your work with that and where that's led for you now?
So Meals on Wings is a perfect example of me saying yes before I knew what I was getting into. We were doing campus, like a campus kitchen type model where we recovered food made in excess at the cafe on campus. And we packaged it into healthy meals. And at that point, we were going to the AIDS network in Jacksonville because the number one nutrition issue in people living with HIV and AIDS has been food insecurity. So then the case managers would hand out to who needed those meals the best. So I was at an area meeting on hunger in older adults in Jacksonville, and I heard that 1,000 individuals in Jacksonville that qualify for Meals on Wheels were just sitting on the wait list because there wasn't enough capacity. And I was like, there's something I can do about this. So, I thought, how do I change this campus kitchen model? And I was actually interviewed by the newspaper and about that I was going to do this model. And I'm like, yes, we're going to do, we're going to recover food. We're going to deliver these meals to our homebound seniors on the wait list. I didn't even have a hospital yet, but I went, I have the newspaper article where I'm talking about how we're going to do this program. We didn't even have a hospital, but someone at Baptist Hospital in Jacksonville saw the article, reached out to me and said, we want to be your hospital. Will you work with us? And I'm like, well, I have a lot of people, but no, yep, absolutely. So Baptist became our first hospital, and we started in the spring. So it was a little less than a year, almost summer, a little less than a year before COVID. We were tooling along. We had 2 hospitals, I think. We were serving about 30 homebound seniors, student driven, and then COVID hit. And the universities all shut down. We weren't allowed to be on campus unless we were essential personnel. Thankfully, I had just presented about Meals on Wings a couple weeks before COVID hit. And the president of the university at the time was in the audience, and he came up to me afterwards and he was like, love the program. And so when COVID hit and we weren't allowed on campus, I reached out to him. I said, President Szymanski, we are essential. We cannot leave these older adults. They're counting on us. And he said, okay. So we had to make a few adjustments. Students weren't technically allowed on campus, so we would meet them. They would go and recover food. We would meet them in the parking garage. We would go in and put the meals together. Dr. Ross and myself and soon to be Dr. Nemchuk, we would put these meals together, and then we go and meet out in the parking lot. It was like drug deals or something, it was so crazy. And it wasn't just those 30 that we had been serving, but now there were hundreds of people that are older adults that needed meals. So we not only did we continue functioning, but within a month and a half of COVID hitting, we went to 100. By the end of the summer, we were at 150. And by the end of the year, we were at 200 older adults. And, the hospitals were shut down, but we needed more food. We needed more hospitals. And you would think the hospitals, wouldn't play, but they believed in this. And so we expanded to 5 hospitals. And, again, we would meet out in the loading dock and things like that, or go through temperature checks and things like that. But, there was such a heart to help those individuals. And the whole mission of these meal delivery programs, whether it be our Meals on Wings, Meals on Wheels, mom's meals. It's more than a meal. It's not only a nutritious meal, but it's the socialization. And so many of our clients, they didn't see anyone but us, and they got really close with the students. Addie had been a long-term volunteer in the program, and when she graduated, there was one lady that was particularly close to her that got her a graduation present. I mean, it was just, there was just such a closeness. And what I always talk about Meals on Wings, at University of North Florida, our mascot is the osprey. And so a lot of times that's why we picked Meals on Wings, and we had a wing on our logo. But the wing evolved from an osprey wing to an angel wing, because a lot of our clients, and even one of the hospitals, when we as volunteers would get there, they would say, the angels are here. And so we changed to the angel wing, because truly our student volunteers are doing it's just a beautiful thing. I am trying desperately to expand. We had the secret sauce in Jacksonville, and that program is still going beautifully under soon to be Dr. Nimchek. But we received some money to expand to 2 other universities. Neither of them went, they didn't get off the ground. And I'm now trying to do it at University of South Florida and not having as much luck. So I'm kind of moving now more into food as medicine programs and culinary medicine programs until I get my teaching kitchen. But I will have a program one day, I'm sure.
I love that. And I love this thread that has come through your whole career of saying yes, connecting to people when they need that help, starting with those HIV/AIDS patients at the VA, and then seeing the need here, before the pandemic and then through the pandemic. And even the Florida Academy, when you took on the presidency, of saying yes before knowing everything that was going to be entailed. We'll figure out the details later, but I know I can help, and I know I can have an impact on this. But you don't just help with hunger here. It looks like you have also helped globally around the world. And in fact, I read an article about taking students at University of South Florida to Ghana to see how dietitians work in that country. What has that experience been like?
Doing international work is probably one of the highlights of my career. And, I've worked in Panama, Dominican Republic, India, but I would say that probably my favorite experiences have been in Africa, whether it be Uganda, South Africa, and then more recently, Ghana. I've actually been going to Ghana for about 10 years. I had one of my friends, dietetic educators at Iowa, they had a relationship with the University of Ghana where their interns would go over, and she invited me one fancy. We were having drinks, and she's like, you should go with us. And so I went, and I was so impressed with the dietitians in Ghana, how well trained they are, their practice skills. And so that first time I went, I did a class on the nutrition care process for the dietitians and students. And I believe that to implement the nutrition care process is challenging. And then in a low resource setting, it's even more challenging. So what we did is, after we did the class, we stayed on for another week, and we went to the various hospitals in Accra, the major city, and kind of had like a champion at each hospital that we worked very closely with. How do you implement the nutrition care process there? And so it's just continued each year, doing different continuing education. And when I was at University of North Florida, I would take the doctoral students. They were already advanced practice dietitians, so I would take them. We only missed 1 year because of COVID. And then when I came to USF, it was my first time taking interns, which was really interesting, but an amazing experience for them. I applied for a Fulbright, and sometimes failures can still result in wonderful things. So I made it to the final, but I in the end was not accepted for a Fulbright. But I just believed in what I was proposing. And so my husband and I were at the right time in our lives. And so we sold everything. We sold our house, we sold our cars, we moved to Ghana for a half a year and did some, full circle. I helped write the self-study, and University of Ghana, there's a site visit in November that I'm actually going on as the cultural liaison. University of Ghana will be, after all this process, they will be the first international program accredited in all of Africa. So that was one of the projects. I also was on staff at the major teaching hospital there in Ghana. So it's just been a wonderful relationship with the dietitians, with the university, and taking students there is just transformational. The dietitians in Ghana, what I always tell my students when we go is, you're used to in the States, if you have a patient that needs a tube feeding, there's a formula for them. So if they have diabetes, if they're in critical care, we have formula for that. In these low resources countries, they don't have that. And so the dietitians have to be very creative with their interventions. And, I always, again, learn so much from the dietitians. And I think it's made me a much better practitioner. And I think it makes my students that go there better practitioners as well.
Oh, I think that's so incredible. And I love how you turned a no into a yes, again, without being scared of what you were doing. That's so amazing.
I have this Facebook post. It's like packing my life up and moving to Africa. What would you take? It was such an incredible experience for me and for my husband.
And again, starting with the yes at that fancy that you went to.
Just say yes. Take that, take the leap, try something new. It's okay to be uncomfortable because that's all part of growing. And it's exciting. I'm so glad that every yes, from the very first yes, when I always tell my students this, back in the day, I didn't match for an internship. I was an alternate. And back then you could only apply to 2 programs. I was an alternate for one. I didn't get an internship. So I graduated, started working as a tech at a hospital. And 1 week before the internship was supposed to start, I got a phone call from the Cleveland VA and said, somebody got pregnant. You were an alternate at the other Cleveland hospital. Would you want to come here? And I said, yes, yes. And, got a phone call from Tampa VA, would you want to move here for a job? It was yes. And if people laugh, they would never believe that I was a shy kid, but I was a very shy kid. And even in my 20s was pretty shy, that I just said yes and took that leap. But look where I am today, so take the leap.
That's so amazing. And for the kids that are now in internship, they don't know the struggles of waiting on those match divisions.
Yes. And how so many people didn't match. That would have been amazing. I know people that went on to nursing, to med school, that because they didn't match in a dietetic internship. So things in our profession are much better as far as entree into the programs.
Absolutely. So as we're reflecting on all of these amazing things you've done, what role would you say that the Florida Academy and the National Academy have had on you in your career?
For me, it's always been about networks. And I have been successful in my various professional roles because of my network. So it was volunteering with as a site visitor with Ascend, that when they were, when they wanted to start the internship at Bay Pines, I was selected because I had all that experience from from Ascend. How many times have I wanted to place an intern somewhere, or I needed to write something for a grant, that I reach out to one of my friends from the Florida Academy or from the National Academy, that those it's a lifetime of friends that have been there to support me professionally and personally. I mean, we all, I went through a tragedy about 2 years ago as president of the Academy, and it was that network of friends that I was overwhelmed at the love and support that my dietitians have given me. So it's absolutely about taking those opportunities from the Florida Academy, from the National Academy, that have made me so much more successful in my profession. I will always be grateful. You always get more than you give.
So as we kind of come to a close here today, what's your hope for the future of dietetics across our state?
It's going to be tough, and a lot of people are going to say no, but we've got to modernize our Practice Act again so that we can be part of the compact. This is going to open up the world, the nation, I guess, for more reimbursement. And so many of the challenges, the criticisms that we have as a profession are about reimbursement. That at the state level, we have to do this. It's not going to be easy, but now's the time. We have to say yes. We also have to be very active. All dietitians need to be part of the Medical Nutrition Therapy Act and the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act. I have been advocating for TROA for over a decade, for MNT for close to that. This is the time, but we need that groundswell. We are close, but this is going to open up that opportunity for dietitians, but also for citizens. There are so many people that can't get access to nutrition counseling because there is no reimbursement for it. Some people, they're wealthy enough that they can pay for it out of pocket, but there are so many people that can't afford it but need it more than anything. That's what this reimbursement will do. If we as a state get the compact, then we can deliver therapy across the nation. And at the national level, if we're getting reimbursement through TROA and MNT, this is going to be the game changer. One day when Addie is president, then, she's going to talk about, back when I first became a dietitian, we didn't get reimbursed for these things, but we're so, look how we're thriving because we're reimbursed for all of this.
I love that. I love that we're putting it out there that this is what is going to happen. We are going to work towards that. We have a rough road, but it's something that we can definitely accomplish if we work together.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being part of our interview today. We've learned a lot. Well, Kalitha, what did you think of this one?
And it was such a great episode. Wow, Dr. Lauri Wright, I love how she is just so passionate about laying a foundation for education, right? Like all the things. She was there to establish a dietetic internship. She had her hands in establishing university programs. Wow, what a trailblazer.
I know. It's definitely a theme that we keep hearing over and over is just the amount of passion that these trailblazers have for our profession. And I think that Lauri Wright really embodies that passion. When you're talking to her, you can just feel the energy coming off her and the love that she has for this field and for the future of the profession.
You really can see it coming off her. Like, did you notice how she lit up when she was just talking about, like, just to paraphrase her here, guys, but like remaining open, right? And sharpening your skills and like, because it's so true. Like, you never know when the next opportunity is going to come up, right? So just like remain open and you'll get there. Like, I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's such an inspirational episode for all dietitians, and just there's so many great elements within it that showcase different ways that you can both get involved in the profession, as well as advance your career in a variety of different avenues. I think she's such a great embodiment of that for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, with that being said, I think another great episode, but not our last episode. So it's important that you are following us so that you don't miss one. Like, subscribe, comment. Let us know what you think of the podcast. We want to hear all of your thoughts and opinions.
Absolutely. And we will see you guys in the next episode.